This is Matthew, host of the Superhero Ethics Podcast, and I've got an ethical question for you. If I'm trying to help you not listen to ads, is it ethical for me to do an ad to help you do that? If you go to our website, theethicalpanda.com, and just click on the join button, for $5 a month, $55 a year, you get to hear all of our episodes without ads. Was I ethical in doing this? Let me know.
Hello, I'm Matthew. This is Superhero Ethics, and you're about to hear an episode that I'm really proud of. But first, I need to issue a correction and an apology. On a recent episode, we were talking about the actor Ben Kingsley in the show Wonder Man, and I referred to his time playing Gandhi in a movie from the early 80s as a white man in brownface. Now, this statement is both flat out wrong, and also, as the person who called me out on this pointed out, a sweeping generalization of what is really a much more complicated situation. So first, just to make very clear, Ben Kingsley is not white. He has an English parent, his mother, and an Indian parent, his father. So first of all, just calling him white was just flat out wrong. Secondly, for the movie itself, Ben Kingsley was playing Mahatma Gandhi, whose skin tone was significantly darker than Mr. Kingsley's, and his skin was darkened, generally understood through makeup and other things like that. There's some arguments that he just was very tanned, but I think the studio has kind of made clear through interviews and the like that it was through makeup. That was a fairly common practice in the early 80s. One that is today looked on, I think, by a number of people as brownface. And there is some discussion and debate over that and some back and forth as to whether it was more to be accurate and therefore because it's playing a historical character acceptable, or whether it is problematic that they didn't take someone who looked more like the Mahatma to play the role. Frankly, that's a discussion that I probably should not have waded into, because while that term brownface is often used to describe him, clearly a much more nuanced conversation that I didn't have the full knowledge of and certainly don't have the life experience of to be a helpful commentator in. So I just wanted to offer that clarification, that apology, and now on with our episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. Friends, February is a very busy month for us for a lot of reasons, but one of the cool things that's happening is this is Black History Month. And if you are on TikTok, one of the creators I hope you're following is JPenumbra. He's doing a great series every day on different Black comic book characters and things like that as part of Black History Month. And I just saw this and I was like, this is something we got to have for our podcast. JP, so good to have you here.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, so here's my question. We've had Black Panther movies. We've had Miles Morales movies. So we're done, right? We've got like enough Black characters. Like it's all, we're not worrying about it.
Lord, it's insane because like there was even like someone who came through my chat like 2 days ago when I was on stream, and they were like, "Where's a Static movie?" And it's like, you don't support the comics, so why would you get it? Question mark. It's like it's an interesting dichotomy we're in right now, where it's like people want to see representation, but at the same time, the studios don't see value in it because they don't believe they're gonna get another Black Panther. They don't believe they're gonna get another Miles Morales. And in their minds, currently from Disney's perspective, Captain America Sam Wilson didn't work, but they sabotaged it in every way, shape, and form. So if anything, their metrics are skewed. And it's very weird because it's kind of the same thing that you see with comics right now, where like I had a great discussion with Joseph Illidge, like a well-known Milestone editor, on my podcast last week, and he even said their evidence is skewed because they look at past metrics, but they're not educating about the pre-order system. They're not educating about how like how everything works when it comes to the comic book shops. They're not promoting more and using social media more. So they're saying, oh, well, you guys didn't support the last one, but they didn't know about the last one. And it ends up being a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, this is kind of like saying, well, people clearly don't want women superheroes because they didn't go to Madame Web. Like, Madame Web was a horrible movie. Captain America New World Order there were 8 million things that were wrong with it that had nothing to do with how much everyone likes Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson.
Exactly. It's very interesting because like they tried so hard to bury that, from the Israeli drama to the random shoving in of the Hulk storylines when they could have just did a Sam Wilson movie. It's very complicated.
Yeah. And it does seem like today the studios are looking for every kind of excuse they can to say, well, no, it's not that there's any racism here, and we're certainly not thinking about racism of the fans. They just didn't want this, when, which is funny because Black Panther is still one of the highest grossing superhero movies, one of the highest grossing movies of all time. The Miles Morales Spider-Man movies have been incredibly successful.
For sure.
And so one of the things that I like about your stream is, I'm not really a comic book guy. I'm mostly I care about it when it gets to the TV. But I do know that one of the things that gets these things to the TV screen, to the movie screen, is when there's a big following. And you're talking a lot about how we need to be doing more to build those followings of characters of color, particularly Black characters, but also I know you care about all kinds of other characters that don't get seen a lot. Talk to us about that process, because I know I've learned a lot just hearing your TikToks about what the business of comic books is like and how people who are, going to the comic book store to pick something up, what we actually have a lot of power in this, but we just don't know it a lot of the time.
Most definitely, because it's definitely an interesting situation where people have a multitude of different situations when it comes to comic shops, where they either have a bad environment because comic book shops are not the safest place for women, not the safest place for people of color, queer individuals like yourself and myself. They don't always have the safest environments in those comic shops, because while yes, there are a lot of progressive shops, like we have entered a more progressive age, there are still the basement dweller stereotypes, the individuals who felt like their domain was only their domain for so many years. In reality, it never was, and they just believed it to be so because they felt like they were the shut-ins, the incels, etc. So that creates a different situation in that right. But then you look at how comic books are using such an archaic system, where for years it was just, oh, we're ruled by a monopoly. Diamond Distribution was a monopoly that controlled the comic book industry for decades, because back in the 80s and 90s, Marvel and DC and all these different publishers messed up how they were doing distribution. Marvel even tried to buy a distributor and it burnt down, and they went back to Diamond hand open, please help us. So everyone just kind of dealt with having one distributor for so many years, and even to the point they were telling the government, please don't look into this. It will ruin the industry. Don't do this. But then Diamond declared bankruptcy right when COVID hit, and that forced everyone to have to figure out what they were going to do next. But even now, it's the same system that it was previously, where you have to go onto a website, pre-order all your books. So when you walk into a comic shop, you walk up to the shelf, pick a book off the shelf, that sale has already been counted. That sale has already been considered, because it's the same thing with bookstores and magazines and whatnot. It's the same process, but it's not changing.
Right.
And that's creating a very interesting situation where, sales exist, but those sales only have been counted because the comic store ordered what they thought they were going to get.
Right.
So you'll hear different comic book store owners say, oh, I ordered one of such and such character, and and then however many for my subscribers that subscribed to that book, and I put one on the shelf. And it's then you look at a book like Batman, where obviously Batman's going to have 10, 20, 30, etc. So Batman's going to have plenty on the shelf. The most recent comic book event will have books on the shelf. But even we saw last year, Green Arrow was canceled after starting out as a miniseries. The sales were so good, it got turned into an ongoing, and then it got canceled. And everyone's like, what happened to this book? What's going on? And longtime writer Scott Snyder caught a lot of flack on Twitter because he said it was sales. But what he didn't say was it was the pre-orders stalled. And that is a very interesting situation.
So there's a couple of things I want to get into here. First, just in terms of the bad reputation of the stores, I have to take your word for it, because I don't go to comic book stores. I go to stores where I play Magic the Gathering on Friday nights, and those are just oases of goodness for people of color and women.
Are you sure about that?
I'm being very sarcastic here. Yeah, no, it's the exact same thing, and we're dealing with the same stereotype. And I managed a store that for years we got in Madison, Wisconsin, a huge college town, second biggest in the country. We got all of the people who weren't straight white men coming. I mean, we had a lot of those too, but we had all the folks who weren't that, because we did crazy things like washed the bathroom once a day and didn't let guys get away with saying sexist things. A girl sits down next to them and say, oh, did you come here with your boyfriend? But so many stores aren't doing that. So But I want to make sure I understand the distribution system here. So if I'm a comic book store owner and I hear there's some new title out and I think my customers want to buy it, but I'm not sure. So I order 20 copies and then no one buys it. I can't send them back to the distributor, right? I'm just stuck with those 20 copies.
You're stuck with that. You like what you'll see a lot of the time is stores will have back issue bins. That's where the term back issue became very popular, because after the first week, it's no longer the new release, so it's a back issue now. So you'll see like plenty of stores have giant like long boxes. Like I have a long box sitting here where I can keep all my books, and like you'll see tons of them, rows, alphabetical order, where they have all their back issues. Either they didn't sell or they bought too many, or like sometimes people who are subscribers end up not ever picking up their pull list, so those get turned into back issues. That becomes a thing, and that's a whole different conversation about abandoning a comic book store and how that kind of caused some stores to go out of sale and shut down. But it's like that's kind of the situation where there's a lot of like burden of guilt on the comic book store as well, because they have to be the ones trying to figure out their audience, try to figure out how to figure like I'll even like use a Magic the Gathering metaphor. Like you have to figure out how many people are coming to the pre-release every week. Yep. How many people are coming to the pre-release? How many boosters are you going to need? You have to judge an entire, and not only that, you have to judge how many people are coming to the pre-release each week for 20, 30, 50 sets of cards. Right. And that's a whole like different situation when it comes to that, where it's like you have to figure out, will these individuals like this book? Will they care about this book? Do I even like invest in this book? And if not, will I buy a couple of them because someone might come in and try it? Sure. But a perfect example is there was this brand new Image comic that just came out this week called Dork. It was a little cute story, but it's like the art is cute, but it's actually pretty graphic and like violent and whatnot, because it's like a fantasy story. And cute little half orc, half dwarf little dude just running through life trying to survive. And it blew up, and no one expected it to blow up, where so many people like enjoyed it. Oh my God, everyone has to have this, and not enough people ordered it. So now it's like, oh, well, guess we're going back for a second printing, and it's a whole different conversation in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that being a real problem, because like you'd think these things really depend on word of mouth, you know, like maybe you're the one person who orders it, but then you really love it. You make a TikTok about it. 3 new people are now like, oh, well, I want to go check it out. But then they go to their store and they don't have it right there.
Right.
So yeah, I can see how. And then like when you talk to the Magic thing, that's a perfect example, because like, you know, Magic the Gathering has been doing things like crossing over with other universes. So we did a thing with like Lord of the Rings, for example.
Yeah, I was there.
We had a real question, because it was, well, how are we going to get Lord of the Rings people who aren't necessarily Magic people to come in? What Wizards did was a huge ad campaign.
Yup.
I imagine for the store, if they're like, well, we don't have many Black people walking through the door, but if we get this Black comic, maybe we'll get that. But if no one's letting people know to come to our store because there's this new comic hero coming out, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, it sounds like.
Or like what even happened last year when we saw the new Superman movie come out. Mr. Terrific was like the breakout star. He's Black, he's very autistic coded, everyone loves him, everyone's enjoying him as a character, but then only to come to find out that there's a brand new Mr. Terrific miniseries coming out from DC and that already has 2 issues released. Hardly any stores ordered it. So everyone's like, I want to read Mr. Terrific. Where do I jump in? Oh, he's only had like 1 ongoing that was canceled back in 2011 after like 8 issues, and he's never had an ongoing ever again. What am I supposed to do? Oh, you can go read like old issues of the Justice Society of America from the early 2000s. What? Like it's a lack of logic on not only the comic book stores but DC as a whole, where they don't think ahead of time to plan these things. They don't think, maybe we should like give people more than 6 months worth of like 10, 15 minutes of entertainment, because the average comic is between 10 to 20 minutes of entertainment for about $3 to $5. So that ends up being a really different conversation of like, if this releases monthly, how much enjoyment is someone going to get out of this down the road? It's a constant like
Right.
analytics game where they're trying to figure it all out, and if they're not seeing profit off of it, or they're not seeing any sales metrics off of it, they don't value it. And it's funny because like I was interviewing Morgan Hampton, the current writer of Green Lantern Corps, and he kind of put it best where it's like, I don't think DC's doing it maliciously.
Uh-huh.
They just don't care because
Right.
they're looking at the metrics and not seeing value, so they're like whatever. That's why I even kind of made the meme off of the famous like Kanye West stint from back during Katrina where it says George Bush doesn't care about black people. I put DC Comics doesn't care about black heroes because it genuinely is a situation of like they don't care because they don't see value in it. You're
Yeah.
not giving them a reason to see value in it.
And I think that's such an important point because I think it's easy to look at this and someone will take away and go, "What, you think DC is full of a bunch of racists who are intentionally keeping black comics out?" And like, as
Mm,
I understand it, that's not the case. It's
right.
that it's a very tight financial market, and
Mm,
right now they know that white straight male superheroes sell.
yep.
And if they cared about expanding diversity in heroes, they have to take some risks and they
Mhm.
have to be willing to put some money behind it. And that's the and I think that to me at least that's the message really is we need to be pushing that. Both telling these stores and these companies, no, take the risk. We're here. We will put money in your hands, but also saying, look, it's not cool. It's not okay to be cowards. It's not okay to just keep saying, you know, you got to give us more because
Most definitely, yeah.
it is so easy for people to use that economic excuse to say, "Oh, well, that's like how long did they say they couldn't give us an Asian superhero because just
Mm.
that wouldn't play in certain markets?" Shang-Chi, very
Well,
successful
and
movie.
it's funny because like Shang-Chi is a very interesting situation because for decades Marvel was very much like making stereotypes out of like POC characters. Like if you go
Mhm.
and it's why when you look at how different Shang-Chi and the Mandarin were in that movie, you can't tell a fan, hey yo, go read Silver Age, Golden Age Shang-Chi or Mandarin because it is very problematic and
Yeah.
it's very concerning. So it's like there was this issue for a long time where Asian representation was non-existent. They were like, "Oh well, Asian fans read manga, so we're not going to make Asian comics." And then
Mhm.
and then they finally tried to hop on the bandwagon in the early 2000s, where they had a new Shang-Chi run. They created Big Hero 6 because Big Hero 6 is actually a Marvel property. They gave that to Disney because they were like, "We don't want this. Going to do what you want," and they like reformatted it into a whole new thing to where it's a Disney property now. If you look at Baymax in the comics, Baymax looks like a freaking like a transformer more than he looks like a bundle of jello.
He's
And
not
it's so
cuddly.
funny. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's not cuddly at all. So it's very interesting to see how that happened to where Marvel didn't see value in the property because they saw no Asian fans giving a crap. And it got to a point now where you see things like Marvel Rivals or even the different mobile games like Marvel Future Fight or things like that, where NetEase and Netmarble came in and was like, y'all Asians characters suck.
Yeah.
So they straight up were like, can we create our own Asian characters in your universe and partner with you? And they're like, yeah. So you see Luna Snow, white, like a white fox. I forget the name of the little girl with the bear spirit, but like there's a few. Oh, I think her name's Crescent. There's a couple of those mixed in with
Mhm.
Shang-Chi, with like a couple other characters like that, Amadeus Cho and whatnot. But it genuinely became a situation of someone else had to come in and tap Marvel on the shoulder and be like, "You're kind of failing."
Yeah.
But that's what I've been kind of trying to do until DC, where it's like you're kind of failing right now, and you're using the excuse of sales when in reality you really didn't give these books a chance. You
Yeah.
didn't do anything to really move the needle. You just said, "Oh, I'm gonna watch the bird fall out of the nest and not care about it, and then blame the bird."
Yeah, I'm gonna do the bare minimum so I can say I did the bare minimum. And
Exactly.
you're right. It makes something like Mr. Terrific feel all the more important because you're talking about like going back to the problematic history. I remember
Mm.
when Luke Cage came out, the show, which was
Ooh.
fantastic, and then a whole bunch of people were like, "Yeah, let's go read back issues of Luke Cage from the '70s," and I was like, "Oh, when white
Sweet
people write."
Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I went to a great panel discussion right around that time, and I was talking about how like people were really excited about Luke Cage and really excited about Black Panther, but one person was saying like we need a black hero from the suburbs. Like, why does every black hero have to come from, this was the wording they used, the ghetto or Africa, And like,
yeah.
And so talk a little bit more about Mr. Terrific and like why that character was so important.
So it's very interesting because like you have two great examples of why I think DC has a great opportunity right now. We had both Mr. Terrific and Black Lightning. Black Lightning and Mr. Terrific both are characters from the suburbs. They are characters that escaped poverty. They are both Olympic athletes that went to like were in the same circles, to the point that even in the newest Mr. Terrific Year One miniseries, Al Letson spun their origins together, and that's now canon in the comics. But it's like these two characters like did their work, succeeded, went on, became Olympic athletes, were very well studious, and in Mr. Terrific's case is the third smartest person in the DC universe behind Lex Luthor and Batman. And it's like you have an opportunity here where you have a very autistic like coded character that a lot of black like fans are seeing, noticing. And what's so funny about him is he's a legacy character. Because Terry Sloan was a white guy back in the 80s and 70s in the JSA. He was just a guy who didn't like the mean guys down the block. So his thing was fair play. So he wanted to beat up the people who were causing trouble. And Michael Holt was inspired by that. So he took the fact that he didn't have powers, he just had a genius level intellect, and made the T-spheres and made all this technology. That way he could be a superhero. And it came out of tragedy because of his wife dying and his child dying. And he was like, I'm going to try to be an inspiration to others. But in the case of Black Lightning is the ultimate success story because he came out of the ghetto. Like went to be an Olympic athlete and then came back to his hometown and tried to save it from the problems. And that's why he is a school teacher and is like in the trenches of it, rather than just being a ghetto-based character that's a stereotype like Luke Cage. He was created in a way to basically give, like, quite frankly, like representation to Cleveland, because his creator is from Cleveland. And genuinely, the story of Black Lightning is always hilarious to me, and not everyone knows the story because Jenny Isabella was like, she created Misty Knight, who was seen in Luke Cage. She created Bill Foster, Goliath, and she was asked by DC to come on. And she straight up was was presented this pitch for a black character. The pitch was, it was a white guy who at night would turn into a black guy and he would go fight crime.
What?
And this was
got a Rachel Ranma one half.
Literally, it was in the 70s. It was 1975. He like she was presented with this idea, and she straight up said, "You will literally ruin your company if you do this." So she had another collaborator come in, and who would do the art, and they worked together and created this character who is pretty much the exact opposite of this. And you would think this character could be the ultimate representation of giving black folks more, but for some reason he hasn't really stuck. And next year is his 50th anniversary, and DC doesn't care. DC gave him a 5-issue miniseries last year, and it was short. And the writer, like Brandon Thomas, was on Twitter saying, "Hey, pre-order this, please pre-order this," and no one was paying attention, and that caused a big issue.
Well, and that's interesting because, and I don't know where you stand on this, but one of my biggest entrees into DC was the Arrowverse, which has some good things about it, has a lot of bad things about it. But I will say it introduced the two characters we're talking about, but both towards the end of the runs. So we did have a Mr. Terrific who came in and was a lot of things you're talking about. He was actually explicitly gay in the show, which was, even more kind of awesome to see. But he's also a sidekick to Arrow.
Yes.
And also it's in the later seasons when they're sort of like, plot? What plot? Let's just write whatever the hell we want. Exactly. And then also they did have a Black Lightning TV show, which I think ran for a couple seasons.
It ran for 4 seasons, yeah. And like the biggest issue with that Black Lightning faced was there was no content to make a show out of. Because when the show was coming out, he had less than 30 issues of a solo series, because he had 11 in the 70s, he had, I think, 13 in the 90s, and then nothing. And then they gave Jenny Isabella a mini series when the show was coming out that was 6 issues, and that was it. And they're like, they kept taking things from when Black Lightning was a part of the Outsiders to supplement it, but it got to a point where they basically sped run Arrow, where they ran out of content so fast that they were just making stuff up, and it became a detriment to where they genuinely had nowhere to go with the show.
Yeah, because I remember the first season seemed this really interesting thing, especially with his daughter perhaps becoming a hero, and like you were doing all this great stuff, but yeah, it just sounded like it petered out. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Plus, I think also it started in what, year 8 of the Arrowverse, year 9,
Yeah.
when because Arrow and Flash were starting to really struggle, I think a lot of people were kind of turning the whole thing off.
Most definitely, and then you even had Naomi, which was a show that became a few years after Black Lightning, right when all the Crisis stuff was going on. It didn't end up being connected to any of it, but it was still a DC superhero show. Naomi is a character that was created by Brian Michael Bendis, like when he came over to DC. That was supposed to be another great young black character to supplement like the lack of diversity and whatnot, but they greenlit a TV show for her only after 6 issues because Ava DuVernay, a famous director, just liked the concept. And they were like, let's make a whole TV show out of 6 issues of a comic book, and thought it was going to be successful. And I the minute they announced it, I was like, that's going to be canceled in less than 6 months. And I was right.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So let's talk about this project you're doing for Black History Month. Why? Tell me about kind of the genesis of this project.
So honestly, it straight up was just like, I didn't plan it, and it ended up being just kind of off the cuff, where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just have fun with it and just see how far I can get. And I'll admit, even yesterday, I was kind of tired, and I got home from my day job and was like, I'm gonna supplement a video from stream, and that'll be day 12. And it was very much like I had no energy, but it was like, if anything, I'm gonna try to like introduce some people to some characters, introduce some people to some creators. Like today is like normally favorite cover Friday, and like I was gonna do like I have a cover of a video before, like, once we're done with this, where it's just like showcasing an artist but showcasing a story that I really enjoy, plus it ties into an interview that I'm dropping on Tuesday. So it's just trying to give people the ability to showcase characters they care about. And that's a big issue that we notice currently, is that people say, oh well, there's not enough of these characters. It's like, well, I'm gonna show you stuff. And there was even an opportunity where a indie company, Next Up Comics, sent me a like brand new black character they created, Pepper Piper Monster Hunter, and I was like, I'll showcase that. And like I'm even doing a video on Saturday after I get a tattoo, where I talk about like a character from James Tynion's universe, Something's Killing the Children, that's a black queer character. And it's just like trying to talk about the things that matter and like introduce people to these stories they don't know about, because you can't say if you don't know about it if I don't tell you. But it gets to a point where it's like the old metaphor of you can lead a horse to water, and it's like I'm gonna get you all the way to drinking, and if you can't drink it, that's on you. That's kind of my motto with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're really doing the marketing that we want DC to be doing.
Like it's so funny too, because I even posed that to Joseph Village last week, where it was like, you would think that all like, because there was this great thing they did back in the early 2000s called DC All Access, where they had Jason Inman, and I forget the young girl's name who would do it alongside him, but they were on YouTube interviewing creators, talking about storylines, giving like little synopsises of characters and whatnot in weekly videos, and talking about like new news that was coming up. And it's like, you know how many creators DC could look to do that kind of content for free? There's a great young lady on Instagram and TikTok, Sammy DeMonster. She does videos and publicity for James Tynion's imprint, Tiny Onion, when it comes to like Boom Studios and Image Comics. And she is just pumping out content for them and talking about that awesome stuff. But it's like, what if DC actually looked to creators like me, like yourself, and actually try to say, let's actually utilize this like marketing that's out here and care about the things that are going on. And you can kind of see that some of the other publishers like Ignition Press, Image, and whatnot are trying to do that. They're even trying to let people know when final order cutoff is, which is like, you have 3 weeks before a book comes out to where we
Right.
finally cut off orders for the book. That way we can process and get them shipped and whatnot. And that's been a big thing of letting people know when FOC is. That way you know when you have your deadline to order a book. And that's been progressive. But it's like, it's not enough because you think you would have figured this stuff out 10 years ago when
And the
like
thing is,
Vine was a thing.
other industries do this. Like we've talked about Magic the Gathering. Part of how I know when do I want to go to my store and say, let me pre-order a box of this, is because the reviewers I care about have already gotten some of the cards.
Right. There's preview cards, freaking Wizards is sponsoring game nights. Like there's so many things that people are doing. Why haven't we figured this out yet?
I have an interview coming up where I'm interviewing an author of a book on manga that hasn't been published yet. Because the whole point is so that people will see she's on a media tour. People will hear about the media tour. I'm guessing I'm one of the smaller stops, but still, maybe 1 or 2 people. Here's my thing, pre-orders it. So it seems, why in the world wouldn't they say, let's go find 5 people who are talking about Black comics and we'll give them a pre-copy so they can talk about it and help drive sales. Let's find some of the women who are creators and send them like our newest version of Wonder Girl or whatever the heck it is.
Right. And it's so funny too, because like there was a time during the pandemic where it felt like a bug got into DC and they were trying, because they had these like digital Comic Cons called DC Fandom where they would announce certain things and have like little panels with different creators and actors and whatnot. But it was like, because we're locked in a house, so we can't go anywhere. But they didn't learn from those experiences in a digital age where they could do more with that. And it's like, do you know how cool it would have been if you would have been like, hey, yo, let's learn from these things that we're doing, these collaborations, and modernize it for now? Because you could be telling people, hey, this is at your local comic book shop. This is like coming out this week. Like I sat with the social media manager for Image Comics last night on stream, and we were talking about what books are coming out, what great things are coming out this way. And I want to do more with that. I want to be able to work with DC and Marvel, etc. And the thing is, Marvel's trying. I will give Marvel this. They're like sponsoring different creators sometimes to pimp Marvel Unlimited, which is their digital reading application where you can pay a subscription and read a bunch of back issues and whatnot, which that's cool, but they need to do more. And I don't think Disney's paying attention to that because they don't really take comics seriously. But it's like, genuinely, if DC would push more, because DC was top seller last year, they moved finally the needle far enough to where they're the top seller, and then Indie's creeping up on Marvel's butt, because Indie is a new avenue that you see Image, Boom, Vault, etc. All these different publishers coming in and saying, hey, we have fresh jumping on points, fresh like characters and stories that aren't superheroes that you can read right now. And you see a lot of fans who just want to read a book, not just a superhero book, clamoring for this.
Stuff. I mean, this is over in Marvel, but with a Black lead. The show that came out, Wonder Man. We've done episodes about it. That is not a superhero show. That is a show about struggling actors, one of whom happens to have superpowers.
Right.
And it's fantastic, and it's the acting is phenomenal, and it's giving a chance for people to see a story that's not just I kept waiting for it to fall into the template of, okay, you gave us 6 episodes of interesting development. Now have the big bad, and our hero has to decide that he's going to be a hero instead of being an actor. Instead, he only uses his powers to like help his friend, and that's it. He's an actor. He's not a superhero. When we talk about the kind of things you're looking for, obviously we want more Black characters, we want more Black leads, but not all representation is good representation. We've talked about like Luke Cage in the 70s. It's a step forward, but it's kind of a step back. Like, when you hear, okay, there's a new character coming out who's Black, what are you looking at? Are you going to look at like, is the writer and the artist, like what's their background? What, are you looking at what are the stories they're telling? Does it fall into stereotypes? Like what's the lens that you're bringing to it and that we should bring to it?
I would always say, and like I will even say, I'm always someone that craves a good story. Even though I'm a big proponent of making sure there is representation, and I love a story that showcases representation, I am somebody that says, hey, if a character is Black, I'm going to resonate more with it. If a character is queer, I'm going to resonate more with it, because that's like my history. It's what I deal with every day. So I will be more drawn to it. But if you put a book in front of me, I'm probably gonna read it.
Yeah.
And that's how I very much am. And I will definitely be more like very transparent about that. That I will always be down for a good story. Do I have my favorites? For sure, obviously.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the black lens, I will always say like, and it goes back to a video that I saw a few weeks ago where there was straight up a dude who was like, you kind of need to bring like the hood in sometimes with it, where it's like you have those characters that can represent like the culture and represent different things. But I truly do feel like you need a black perspective to write that. You can't just have a white man writing Sweet Christmas all the time. Granted, have white creators done good with that over time for sure. One of my favorite comic books ever is Cage by Gendy Tartakovsky, like the cartoonist did a Luke Cage comic book. And it's very good, but like that's a dime a dozen compared to what should be there. And it's like if you actually give black creators the room to tell their own stories, you get sometimes it may not have anything to do with like racial injustice or racism or things of that nature. Sometimes it's just gonna be a story. Like there's just like a whole pitch I saw for someone who wants to do like a demon hunter story. No racism, no nothing, no police brutality, nothing. Just like an old black dude from the South fighting demons. I was like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And sometimes you need that kind of like escapism from real life, but sometimes you need to showcase the realism of it. And that's why there was even a buzz on social media this past week where there was a like the biggest comic book YouTuber straight up said he didn't enjoy or read Milestone because it was just black politics. And it's like that tells me you didn't actually read it, because when you sit down and read Milestone, the history of Milestone, not only is it not just black comics, it's diverse comics. It was founded and created by black staff at first, but they had plenty of like Asian representation, plenty of LGBT representation. But they made sure to showcase everything, not just the cishet white males everyone else had been reading for decades. And that's where the narrative shifts when you actually look at Milestone from the correct lens, where Static is a young dude who grew up a little bit in poverty. Mom's working the night shift, dad's trying to make ends meet, and like he's going to high school with average kid problems. He's supposed to be a more modern, realistic take of Peter Parker. He's supposed to be what we're really seeing there. Or Hardware, Curtis Metcalf. He is somebody that is plucked out of poverty by a rich white man because he sees he has a Tony Stark level intellect. And when he grows up and realizes the white man never really cared about him, he then like conspires to ruin his entire company because of what he did to him. And then that converts him into being a superhero once he does get his revenge. And you can tell different stories when you actually give the person who the story is about the reins to tell those stories. Now, granted, you have people like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, or like Brian Michael Bendis, who have gone on their like merry way to say, I don't like that there's no black people here. I'm gonna make a black person. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's the only representation a lot of us get that isn't just imprinting on white characters.
Yeah. And that feels so important. And that's where I think it becomes so important that you're doing both the, that the writer is representing the experiences that you have. And also that because no one character is just one thing, when you are writing about things that aren't your experience, you're asking about them, and like Misty Knight is a character who I know a lot of women feel very represented by her. And that's awesome. Know a lot of black folk who feel very represented by her. That's awesome. I'm an amputee. I use a prosthetic. I am in no way represented by her. Her experience makes whereas like Echo, in part because the actress is herself an amputee and set up, had a lot of input in the writing process. That's a character I can look at and go like, I'm not Native, I'm not a woman, but like I understand her experience. Now Misty Knight, she has a prosthetic because it's a fun comic book gadget. I don't expect it to be. But it's one of the, it gives me that insight of like, this is why it's important to have the writer from that experience, or at least be asking other people, bring other people into the room, that kind of thing.
Or like even if your lived experience, I'll even take it back to Jenny Isabella. Jenny Isabella is a trans white woman from Cleveland who just grew up like before transitioning in a society where like she was always around black folks. She was
Yeah.
always around black folks. So she had a authentic experience. She would ask people questions. She didn't just assume stuff and make things up like Sweet Christmas. She actually put the effort in to give people representation and not just be a stereotype. She actually put the effort in to make Jefferson Pierce feel authentically black.
Yeah. And that seems so vital, you know?
Mm.
And so, okay, so for the average fan now, we're hearing this, you know, a lot of my fans, as I said, are more on-screen people, but still care about the comic books as well. And I
Mm.
think as you're kind of helping tell us, if you want the character to appear on screen, you got to go back up the stream somewhat. And
Mm.
if you want them to appear on screen, you have to go upstream somewhat and get them to have
Mm.
comic books first. If I'm going to walk into my comic book store tomorrow and say, hey, who are the people I should be asking about? Who are the black characters or black writers that are coming out right now or that could be coming out soon that I should be saying, hey, if you put this on your shelf, I will buy it.
Okay, so like, one great thing that I always tell people is that like, there's a great tool that DC has rolled out over the past few years called the Compact Edition. They're taking stories from their catalog that are their biggest hits or what they view as big hits because some sold well. There's some debate about like what Wonder Woman books were picked or what Batman books were picked, but like what sold the biggest numbers and what they saw value in to put in little 10-book little compact editions, kind of like when you go to like an airport, you see a little small book, kind of like that. It's like the idea, like it's cheap, it's less refined versions of these stories that people can pick up and just like take home. There's a great one that it takes place in the Milestone Returns universe for Static. That is a great one that anyone can pick up and find a good black story. That was from 2021. Anyone can enjoy that. There are some awesome indie creators out right now from Image, from Boom, from Vault that are putting out great work. If you're a horror fan, I just got this in the mail the other day. Philadelphia by Rodney Barnes is literally one of my favorite stories of all time. It's what if what if John Adams came back after like being president and after him and his wife went on an excursion to to Africa, they came back with vampirism and infected the whole world, and that becomes a whole damn thing in its own right. Or there's a great book out by Stephanie Williams at Ignition Press called Roots of Madness, where it spins the idea of Madam C.J. Walker and turns her into an alchemist, not just a chemist. And there's certain things like that where you can find magnificent stories out there. But the primary thing when you walk into a shop is just like, as long as you walk in and like the comic book store owner isn't just an asshole off rip, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be like, hey, I'm looking for this, or hey, I would like this kind of character. And if they can't give you the answers, don't be afraid to reach out to me. Don't be afraid to hit up my comment sections. There's plenty of creators that I share all the time that share all these different books. Marvel is constantly putting out different things. Like they have a Storm miniseries going on right now, a Black Panther miniseries. Miles Morales just had a great 4-year run of comic books, so they hit an ongoing. Like there's books out there that you can find. When it comes to creators, there are some amazing creators that are making books right now. Like I said, Rodney Barnes, Stephanie Williams, brain farted real quick. There is great like individuals like Brandon Thomas that are doing indie stuff right now. David F. Walker has done great. David F. Walker just put out like a brand new graphic novel, not just a comic book, but a great graphic novel that did a retelling of John Henry. Like there's a lot of great books out there that you can find. And also there's just really good books that you can find on TikTok right now. There are great indie creators making books on TikTok that you don't even necessarily have to go into a comic shop. You can buy it off the TikTok shop and support a creator if you want to. So like the biggest thing when going into a comic book shop, not even from a black perspective, but from like a queer perspective or a women perspective, don't be afraid to ask questions because I know for a fact there are a lot of comic book shops these days that actually employ women, like employ like queer individuals.
Mhm.
That way they can get authentic stories in their hands. My big sister Mary worked in a comic book shop for years, and it got to a point where she was recommending books to a girl one time, and it saved her for from like ending her life one time because
Yeah.
she finally found representation. And it got to the point where like a popular comic book website did a story on it, and then DC found out, and then DC had all the characters from the CW send her gifts and whatnot. So sometimes you can make an impact by just asking some questions. Don't
Yeah.
be afraid to look for what you want to see out there.
And that's so important. And I think the thing, especially about like who's working at these stores, because I talk a lot about the Magic stores, and frankly, like
Mm.
there's a lot of overlap. Like most game stores and card stores are probably gonna sell some comic books, and most
Oh, for
comic book
sure, yeah.
stores probably have some Magic events. And
Mhm.
10 years ago, a lot of those stores, the margins were big enough that you could be an old boys clubhouse and
Mhm.
basically have a no girls allowed sign, and like a lot of and
Yeah.
you could do it. The margins aren't good enough anymore. You need every single customer. And yeah, I guarantee you that any shop that's been open for more than a year, that owner, if you don't have a way to give them money, they want to find a way so you can give them money. So tell
Mhm.
them what you give them money for.
Almost definitely. Like it's to the point where, like you said, there's a lot of overlap. I'm lucky that I'm in a larger city. I'm in Akron, Ohio, where like I have 3 comic shops within spitting distance of me. I have a game store within spitting distance of me. Neither the game store is only a game store, but like they have everything in there when it comes to like
Yeah.
Magic, Warhammer, all that stuff. But then if I go like 30 minutes one direction over by the college campus, there's a comic and game store
Yep.
combined into one, where like a lot of stores have found you have to do overlap to survive.
Oh
Or
yeah.
like or like some game stores and some comic book shops will become a Funko Pop hell, where they have to like have those to survive because those move the margins. So it's like it's to the point now where you can't just be one or the other. You have to be both sometimes, or multi different platforms, because otherwise you're not going to make enough overhead to survive.
Yeah. Now, we're talking about walking the comic stores, which
Mm.
on a podcast like this, I've probably got 1 or 2 listeners who find that idea a little bit socially uncomfortable, myself
Mm.
included. I know that there are ways to like pay a subscription fee and read Marvel comics online or read
Mm.
DC comics online. If I'm doing that, like, are they tracking that I'm going to the Mr. Terrific stuff so that they can keep track? Like,
So it's complicated because I have had conversations with 2 different writers over the past few months that have worked for Marvel Unlimited, which is the Marvel based platform that the Disney created to read older comics and whatnot. And they straight up said that Marvel and Disney don't view those as like crazy like analytical numbers. They make digital exclusive comics for those platforms that anyone could pay a subscription for and read along with the back issues, but they're not going to be the craziest things that move the needle in terms of that.
right.
The biggest issues right now is that because Amazon absorbed the biggest comic book digital platform, Comixology, because the founders of it couldn't afford to pay the licensing fees and the digital storage fees.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon has like for a long time prior to the pandemic created a monopoly where all you could do was read off a Kindle because of the damage they did to Comixology. But over the past few years, you've seen different platforms pop up. Like the founders of Comixology created Neon Ichiban, which is a new version of that houses manga and comics. That's sort of being a new version of what they had before. But then you look at Sweet Shop. Sweet Shop is a brand new comic platform that is in beta right now. I interviewed the creator of that, and it's trying to be a more creator focused, creator catered to platform, where not only have they created a comic book creator link tree system, but
Mm-hmm.
they've also created a new digital platform where they actually care about the publishers, care about the creators. They want to partner with comic book shops. That way you can like do like
Oh,
an
that's so
affiliate
good.
code system. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And like where you can do an affiliate code system and like support your comic book shop while also paying for your books. Because Comixology used to have a system like that where you would go to like Comixology.com/, store/Rubber City Comics is where I get my books at. And though your purchases would go to your shop, not just Comixology. And that system was coveted for a long time, and Sweet Shop's tried to do that. But they're not fully rolled out yet, so that's not really a thing just yet. But the other big one besides DC, Infinite, and Marvel Unlimited is Global Comics. Global Comics, but like it's not CS at the end, it's X. They not only can you buy digital comics there, you can pay $7 a month to read DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, Image, all these different indie publishers' books for like $7 a month, nonstop, unlimited. Like it's almost like a library, basically.
Right.
And while I know that DC and Marvel aren't crazily like caring about these, they still see, oh, there was an uptick of these numbers to a certain extent. They might look at giving that character a mini series down the road or things of that nature. It's not as hyper pinpointed as the physical system, but it's still a situation of like digital isn't taken fully seriously right now because of the issues with the vendor systems where Comixology isn't really viewed anymore, Ichiban hasn't been fully adopted, etc. To where even but like what was really sad though is even before what happened to Comixology happened, they really weren't tracking digital at all. Like they didn't really care about digital. So like there would be so many fans that would be like, what happened to the series that I was reading? Oh, it got canceled. Well, I was buying it every week off of digital. Digital doesn't count. Digital doesn't count because it's not print media. They don't see it as a valuable source. So I would say the analytics aren't being fully absorbed by the publishers, but they're still tracking them. They're not they're just not valued to the same degree as print media, if that makes sense.
And if nothing else, if online reading is just what works for you, read it online and then tell some of your friends about it. And then maybe they buy a paper copy. You know, 'cause it seems like the word of mouth is really what we need to get these things out there.
Most definitely. I would definitely say that's very true. Yes.
Couple last questions and then we'll kind of wrap up and let you tell people where to find you. We talked a lot about writers for these things, but I could imagine that a white artist or two might have one or two stereotypes about how to draw black characters. I know, shocking, right? Are there black artists in particular that you also always keep an eye out for, you know?
Most definitely. Like I will always say that Sanford Greene is my favorite black artist of all time, where he as a artist has mastered the ability of showcasing what I feel like is almost Harlem Renaissance level of painting on a paper, but also like he is able to draw white characters in a very expressive way as well. Where it's like, you look at that, you know it's Sanford Greene's work. You know that is very well done. He draws black folks very authentically, and it's very well done.
Give an example of a title or two that he did.
Like Power Man and Iron Fist from 2016 is one of my favorite ones that he did. Him and writers Chuck Brown and David F. Walker did Bitterroot from Image Comics. That is one of my favorite titles, like one of my favorite indie titles of all time.
Right.
Like his artwork is some of the best in the game, and he's not appreciated enough. Taurin Clarke is like the black Alex Ross. But like Alex Ross is like very famous for drawing very realistically, and Taurin Clarke does the same thing where like he showcases like characters to almost like fall off the page, and you're like, how is that possible?
Wow.
So it like those are great character like writers artists that I care about a lot when it comes to that. I would say Khary Randolph is another great one that I really appreciate. He has a sort of like almost anime-esque style similar to Dan Mora, but you can tell that it's like authentically black in its own right, if that makes sense. Like Khary Randolph and Brandon Thomas did Excellence over at Image Comics a few years ago, or like Khary Randolph has did Mosaic for Marvel. Those different like books, you could tell it has a very authentic style to it, and I very much enjoyed that.
Awesome. And for anybody who's like, oh my God, I had to pause and write all these down, don't worry. I'm going to go through all this, write down all of this, and put all these names in the show notes so you can find them.
Nice.
I am going to finish up, though, with two on-screen questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, one of my favorite black superheroes growing up was Jon Stewart. And no, I don't mean, obviously, the comedian, but Green Lantern from the Justice League. And now we're going to be getting a TV show with him starring Aaron Pierre, who a lot of people may not have seen. He was in Rebel Ridge, which is just phenomenal. And again, a really interesting take on kind of the role that people expect a black hero figure to take. But his approach to violence and nonviolence is really awesome. How are you feeling about that show coming out?
I am conflicted because not only was there a big discussion in the black comic community about the fact that while Aaron Pierre is a very talented actor, he is, much like myself, very light-skinned. And the issue at hand is that, like, we have always very much seen Jon Stewart being a darker-skinned black man.
Yeah.
So that was very much a topic that I'm concerned about, and I don't know if the show is going to really care about that. I'm also concerned about the fact that, like, I have a long time beef with Green Lantern Hal Jordan, and they've casted him in the show and they're making this like a buddy cop thing. And I'm like, I don't like that. I would rather just see John showcased on his own and more so. Hopefully it ends up being more of a passing of the torch thing as the show goes on, but that's been frustrating. But also there's just been a lot of like racism in the community from a lot of alt-right idiots who assume that they don't realize the dude on screen is Hal Jordan. So they're like, oh, Green Lantern's supposed to be white. I'm like, shut up. There's a lot of Green Lanterns, and it's a whole different issue. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic because I am a longtime fan of Jon Stewart. Currently in canon, he's the most powerful Green Lantern in existence, and that means a lot to me as someone who loved him for years. So I'm hoping that DC does this show justice. Justice. But like, it's one of those things of like, I am cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. I'm probably biased because one of my favorite shows is Friday Night Lights. And the star of that, Coach Taylor, is played by Kyle Chandler, the guy who's playing Hal Jordan. And in the last 2 seasons of it, he is the mentor coach to, in one of his first roles, Michael B. Jordan, playing Vince Howard, a young football star. So I've seen Kyle Chandler be very good at checking his own racism and dealing with a young black man and giving him the space he needs. I don't know how that's going to translate over here, but we'll see.
Right.
But I think, again, that's the kind of thing where, like, I've heard about the colorism discussions a lot in terms of black actresses. I think I wasn't even thinking about it because we don't hear it very often in regard to black actors, but it's the same conversation. So it'd be really interesting to see how that plays out. Last question then. Who is a black character who right now is only on the page that if DC came to you or Marvel came to you and said, you can take any character and give them a 3-season show or a 3-movie deal, who is it? And who would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not going to lie to you. Currently, it would definitely be Curtis Metcalf Hardware because he is a character that could literally address a lot of the concerns we see in comic books right now or just in comic book media, where he is someone who is very intellectually up there with Mr. Terrific, and he can give a very authentic experience where he was plucked out of poverty and plucked out of the black experience very early on. So he, similar to me, would have a very white upbringing where he was forced into corporate intellectualism very early on, and having him have to encounter the streets, having to encounter that would be a very interesting dynamic, and having to balance that. And also because like everyone is always very quick to give Static praise, but Hardware was the first. Hardware was the first and the last to be put out, and he doesn't get enough respect put on his name because Hardware is a very amazing story that not everyone understands and appreciates. And I feel like more people need to look in his direction because, like, in his first 6 issues, not only does he get his revenge and put his like his benefactor into a stalemate to where he stops all of his like illegal operations and whatnot and makes him have to like be on the straight and narrow for a little bit, but like the dude doesn't find out his identity. He ends up being very like clever about how he does things because he has like a synthetic body covering on top of his suit, and ends up being very like powerful in that right. But also he ends up defeating some of the mercenaries that the dude hires, and then he ends up solving an entire murder case where there was a Punisher stand-in
Uh-huh.
who was originally trying to help Hardware stop these prostitutes from being murdered, but only for him to find out that the Punisher stand-in was the one killing the prostitutes because he had a ED issue because he was assaulted by somebody in a previous crime. And it's a multifaceted story that ends up going on to where even later on they redeem that character, Death Wish, and give him his own series. So it's so crazy that not everyone knows about Hardware, knows about his story, because it's so much more impactful than people realize. I would kill for it to be on the big screen.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a good one. Well, thank you. This has been a fantastic time. I definitely want to have you back. But for people who are listening to this and going, well, I need to find more of this JP guy, where can they go?
I'm gonna say I'm on TikTok, Threads, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, all those places. Because I see myself as the comic journalist, I have to be plugged in. So I'm on all those different platforms. I'm posting on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube daily when it comes to making content for people, whether it be responding to people or making fresh content in regards to things. My podcast, Comics Unmasked, is a weekly comic podcast where we talk about the different things going on in the industry. And we also interview different creators almost on a weekly basis at this point, because people keep offering or agreeing to be on interviews. Like, we're even interviewing a well-known novelist, and he's gone on to write a new book for Vault Comics called Nectar. So that's gonna be really exciting in the next few weeks. So you can search me at JPenumbra on socials or look up Comics Unmasked and you will find us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think you said you had an interview coming out Tuesday. If all goes well, that will be the same day that this episode drops. So I assume that's on your podcast?
Yes, I'm interviewing the current writer of Green Lantern Corps. He also wrote Cyborg back in 2023, Morgan Hampton.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, hopefully then once you finish this episode and you've listened to this week's Star Wars Generations, go check out that. Well, thank you so much, JP. This has been fantastic. To all of our fans, write in. Love to hear what you think. What are your favorite Black characters that you've talked about? What are other communities that you are a part of or just care about that you want to see better represented, both in comic books and when comic books make it to the screen? Let us know. Of course, we love to keep talking about it. I'm having JP, myself. Thank you all so much. May the Force be with you.